Klaus Emil Julius Fuchs was born on December 29, 1911, in Selsham, Germany, into the family of a Lutheran pastor who held strong moral convictions and opposed the growing extremism of the time. Fuchs grew up in an atmosphere of intellectual debate and social awareness, but his early years were overshadowed by the political upheaval that followed World War I. As a student, he excelled in mathematics and physics, but he also became deeply involved in leftist politics, joining the Communist Party of Germany. This political commitment would later become a defining force in his life. When Adolf Hitler rose to power in 1933, Germany became an increasingly dangerous place for political dissidents. Fuchs's anti-Nazi activities made him a target, and with the regime tightening its grip, he fled the country. His journey took him first to France and eventually to Britain, where he sought to continue his education and start anew. Britain granted him the opportunity to study, and he enrolled at the University of Bristol before later moving to the University of Edinburgh, where he earned a PhD in physics. By the outbreak of World War II, Fuchs was recognized as a gifted theoretical physicist. In 1941, he became part of Britain's highly secretive atomic research project, known as the Tube Alloys Program, which aimed to develop nuclear weapons before Nazi Germany could. His scientific abilities were soon in demand, and when Britain partnered with the United States to create the Manhattan Project, Fuchs was sent to America as part of the British delegation. At Los Alamos, the heart of the Manhattan Project, Fuchs worked alongside some of the greatest scientific minds of the time, contributing critical theoretical calculations that advanced the development of both uranium and plutonium-based bombs. Yet, behind his calm demeanor and quiet professionalism, Fuchs had already begun passing information to Soviet intelligence. His reasons for espionage were rooted in ideology. A committed communist since his youth, Fuchs believed that the Soviet Union, having suffered immensely during the war, had a right to know about the atomic bomb. In his view, sharing nuclear secrets would ensure that no single nation could dominate the post-war world through nuclear monopoly. To him, it was a matter of balancing power and preventing what he saw as the dangerous potential for American dominance. Between 1942 and 1949, Fuchs provided the Soviets with detailed blueprints, design principles, and experimental data, including information that helped them accelerate their own atomic bomb program. For several years, Fuchs's activities went unnoticed. The Allied nations were still bound by wartime cooperation, and suspicion toward the Soviets had not yet reached its Cold War intensity. But in the late 1940s, as relations between the West and the USSR soared, intelligence agencies began tracking possible leaks of atomic information. In 1949, British and American investigators uncovered encrypted Soviet cables through the Venona project. The decrypted messages pointed to a mole within Britain's atomic establishment, and all signs began to converge on Klaus Fuchs. In January 1950, MI5 summoned Fuchs for questioning. His interrogators described him as composed, almost detached, as he calmly admitted to years of spying for the Soviet Union. The confession stunned both the British and American governments, revealing that the Soviet Union's rapid progress in nuclear weapons development had not been solely their own achievement. Fuchs was arrested and charged under the British Official Secrets Act. His trial was swift. In March 1950, he was convicted and sentenced to 14 years in prison, the maximum penalty available under British law. His case reverberated across the Atlantic, where it became entwined with that of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, two Americans accused of similar crimes. The Rosenbergs were convicted later that year and executed in 1953, their case becoming one of the most famous and controversial espionage trials of the 20th century. While the Rosenberg story unfolded in the United States, Fuchs served his sentence in Wakefield Prison. He spent much of his time reading, writing, and corresponding with colleagues. After serving 9 years, he was released in 1959 for good behavior and chose not to remain in the West. Instead, he moved to East Germany, where he was welcomed by the communist government as a celebrated scientist. In East Germany, Fuchs continued to work in nuclear physics, holding influential positions and contributing to the country's scientific advancement. He lived a quiet, largely private life, far removed from the global headlines that had once made his name infamous in the West. To his colleagues in East Germany, he was a respected academic. To many in Britain and the United States, he remained a symbol of Cold War betrayal. Klaus Fuchs died on January 28, 1988, at the age of 76, His life remains one of the most striking examples of how science, ideology, and geopolitics can intersect and collide with consequences that shape history. He was a man who contributed to one of the most important scientific achievements of the 20th century, only to secretly give its secrets to a rival power, forever altering the balance of the Cold War. His story is a reminder of the moral complexities of loyalty, the power of belief, and the far-reaching impact of choices made in the shadows.